buzzed with weekend noise just outside the San Diego Naval Base, a favorite spot for off-duty military. "Hey, waitress, another round here," shouted Jake Morrison, a 28-year-old SEAL operator with a grin that said he owned the room. At a corner table, Kesha Williams didn't even turn her head. She quietly stirred her drink, the melting ice catching the dim light. At 35, she'd learned not every comment deserved her energy. "I think she's ignoring you, man," laughed his teammate, Tony Castanos. "Maybe she's got hearing problems, too." "To what?" Kesha's calm but razor-sharp voice sliced through the noise. She turned, meeting their eyes. Her gaze was steady, not angry, not afraid, just controlled. It made Morrison pause mid-sentence. "Nah, we're just joking around," he muttered, forcing a smirk. But as she turned back to her glass, Tony noticed something. On her forearm, just under her rolled sleeve, was an intricate tattoo, an eagle with wings curved in a strange pattern, unlike any he'd seen before. "Hey, check that out," Tony whispered. "Weird design, huh?" Morrison followed his gaze, and his curiosity quickly turned into arrogance. Fueled by attention from nearby soldiers, he called out louder, "Nice tattoo! What unit's that from? Never seen it before." Kesha stayed quiet. She'd seen this routine before. The swagger, the testing, the need to prove something. Morrison pushed back his chair and walked toward her. "Come on, lady. That's a cool emblem. But I've served 6 years. Been to places you wouldn't believe. Never seen that bird. Don't tell me it's just for show." The bar quieted. Even the jukebox seemed to hold its breath. Finally, Kesha turned to face him fully. Her expression didn't change, but her voice dropped into something steady and powerful. "You think I've never served?" "Hey, no offense," Morrison said, still wearing that half grin, "but I know all the real units. That mark doesn't ring any bells." Kesha's soft laugh carried through the silence. Low, deliberate, the kind that made a few of the older veterans at the bar glance over with recognition. "You really want to know?" she asked, rising slowly. Now standing, she seemed taller than before. The air around her shifted, calm but commanding. Morrison hesitated for a heartbeat, but pride kept him rooted. "Sure," he said, folding his arms. "Let's hear it." Kesha rolled up her sleeve, revealing the entire tattoo. The eagle wasn't just a bird. It was a masterpiece of precision and symbolism. Lines and numbers intertwined subtly within its wings, the kind of detail that only someone trained in classified operations would recognize. "The story's simple," she said evenly, "but it's not for boys who play soldier." Morrison's grin faded, his face flushed. The bar stayed silent, and then from the far corner, a gray-haired general stood, slowly raising his own sleeve. The same tattoo. "Boys playing soldier, sweetheart. I've been on more missions than you've been years in service." "Really?" Kesha asked, her tone steady, unnervingly calm. "And how many of those missions never officially happened?" The question sliced through the bar's noise like glass. Morrison froze, his confident grin faltering. How could she possibly know about those? The ones that didn't exist on paper. But pride and alcohol made him laugh it off. "Lady, you're talking to professionals here," he said, thumping his chest. "No need to spin movie stories to impress anyone." Tony Castanos chuckled beside him. "Yeah, she's been watching too many spy film," he said, lifting his beer. "No offense, ma'am, but you look more like someone who served coffee at a base than someone who's been on Black Ops missions." Kesha didn't respond. Her eyes moved slowly around the bar. Exits, reflections, faces, sightlines. It was an automatic habit, one she'd never unlearned. To Morrison, that scanning looked like nervousness. "See?" he said loudly, pointing at her. "She's shaking because she got caught lying." He stepped closer, close enough for her to smell the whiskey on his breath. "You know what gives the liars away?" he sneered. "Details. You people never get the details right." "Details," Kesha repeated softly, her calm tone starting to unnerve even the onlookers. "Exactly," Tony jumped in, trying to sound authoritative. "For example, that eagle on your arm. The wings are wrong. Anyone who's really served would know that." "That what?" Kesha asked, gently interrupting. She rolled her sleeve higher, revealing the entire tattoo. "The feathers," she continued evenly, have 13 points, representing the original colonies. The wing position marks active combat status. And these smaller marks around it? She pointed. Each one corresponds to missions in territories that don't officially exist. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the jukebox seemed to go quiet. Morrison and Costanos exchanged uneasy looks. She knew too much, too precisely, but Morrison's pride refused to yield. Anyone can read that online, he muttered, though his voice lacked its earlier bite. That proves nothing. True, Kesha said calmly, reaching for her wallet. For a brief moment, Morrison thought she was about to walk away. Instead, she pulled out a small, worn photograph and placed it on the counter. It showed 5 people in unfamiliar uniforms, standing beside advanced-looking equipment that clearly didn't belong to its time. Kesha was at the center, younger but unmistakable. Afghanistan, 2009, she said quietly. Officially, none of us were there. Officially, that mission never happened. Officially, that equipment didn't exist. Tony leaned closer, his years of experience kicking in. The tech in the picture made no sense, decades ahead of what he knew. What unit is this? He whispered. I've never seen those uniforms. However, you weren't supposed to, Kesha replied, slipping the photo back into her wallet. Some things are classified above your access level, kid. The word kid hit Morrison harder than a punch. At 28, after 6 years in the field, being called that, and by a woman he'd just dismissed, burned his ego raw. Listen here, he growled, his tone dropping. I don't know what game you're playing, but I know fake photos when I see them. Anyone can paste a face on a uniform. Kesha's expression shifted for the first time. The calm didn't vanish. It deepened into something colder. Photoshop, she repeated, voice low, deliberate. And whatever was in that tone made every older veteran in the bar turn their heads. You think I need Photoshop? The air itself seemed to tighten. Kesha stood up, and in that moment Morrison realized just how much he had misjudged her. She wasn't just taller than he expected. There was a precision in her movement, an awareness of space and balance that only came from real training. The kind you don't learn in a classroom. You know the difference between you and people like me? She asked quietly. You learn to be soldiers. I was born one. A bead of sweat slid down the back of Morrison's neck. Something deep inside told him to stop, but alcohol, pride, and the eyes of half the bar held him in place. You're bluffing, he said, forcing a laugh that didn't sound genuine. Women don't serve in special combat units. Women don't officially serve, she corrected softly. But when you need someone who can go unnoticed, someone who can walk into places where men would raise alarms, someone who can remove a target and disappear before sunrise. She let the sentence trail off. Tony Costanos shifted uncomfortably. Morrison, maybe we should... No, Morrison snapped. I want to hear how far she'll take this story. He leaned closer, smirking. So tell me, veteran, how many high-value targets have you eliminated? How many impossible missions have you completed? For a heartbeat, he thought he'd cornered her. But Kesha didn't argue. She just stared at him, then smiled. It wasn't amusement. It was the kind of smile that meant something irreversible had just been decided. Do you really want to know? She asked, pulling out her phone. Because I can show you exactly how many. But once I do, there's no going back. You'll have to live with the fact that you just spent 15 minutes mocking someone who could have ended this conversation in 12 different ways before your partner even noticed. The entire bar went silent. Even the bartender froze mid-motion. Morrison could feel every eye in the room on him. His pride said, don't back down. But the survival instinct that had kept him alive overseas whispered, walk away. Show me, he said hoarsely. But when you can't prove it, I expect an apology. Right here, in front of everyone. Kesha nodded once, unlocking her phone. Done. But when I do prove it, you'll both do something for me. Tony frowned. Do what? You'll call your base, she said evenly. Ask for Commander Richards. When he answers, say this exactly. Sir, we're at Murphy's Bar with Kesha Williams, and we'd like to confirm her military identity. Morrison froze. Commander Richards, his commander, the man he respected and feared most. How do you know that name? he stammered. Kesha smiled again. Let's just say we have history. In fact, he's the one who recommended this place. Said it was full of young operators who could use a lesson in humility. That's when it hit Morrison. This wasn't a coincidence. This entire encounter, every word, every stare, had been planned. But there was no way out now. Half the bar was watching. His reputation was on the line. Trying to keep his hands from shaking, Morrison took out his phone and dialed the base. Each ring felt like an eternity. 1, 2, 3. Then a deep voice answered. Commander Richards. Morrison swallowed hard. Sir, it's Sergeant Morrison. I'm at Murphy's bar with a civilian who claims to know you. Name's Keisha Williams. For a moment, silence. Then a voice he had never heard from Richards before. Sharp, tight, edged with disbelief and something close to fear. Morrison, the commander said slowly, are you telling me you're confronting Keisha Williams in a bar? The color drained from Morrison's face. Sir, she was making claims about military service, and we just wanted to verify. Morrison began to speak, but Richards cut him off. Put her on the phone, now. Morrison glanced at Keisha. She extended her hand without hurry. He handed her the phone. She stepped a few paces away and lowered her voice so the others couldn't overhear. Morrison and Castanos stood rooted to the spot like two students waiting for exam results, both suddenly aware they had failed spectacularly. As Keisha talked, a hush spread through the bar. Patrons leaned in and began whispering. An older man in a Navy veteran cap shuffled forward and spoke in a low tone that made both SEALs sit up. You boys know what you're messing with, he said quietly. There was no threat in his words, only a weight of experience that made those two listen. What are you talking about? Castanos managed, his voice thin. The veteran nodded toward Keisha. That woman. I served in Afghanistan in 2010. I never met her in person, but I heard stories. Stories that officially don't exist. He shook his head. You've picked a fight with someone who's probably saved more lives than the two of you will in your whole careers. A cold sweat worked its way down Morrison's spine. What stories? Castanos asked. The kind that keep generals awake at night, the veteran answered. The kind that make 3-star officers pick up the phone at 2 a.m. Morrison noticed something else then. Keisha wasn't just holding one phone. She was typing on another at the same time, her thumbs moving fast. In the window's reflection, he could see her sending messages to multiple contacts. Castanos noticed too and swallowed. She finished the call and returned the phone to Morrison. Her face was calm but now edged with a hard resolve that made the two men instinctively take a step back. Commander Richards wants to speak to you again, she said simply. Morrison took the phone with hands that trembled. Sir, Morrison, he stammered. Richards' voice came back low and controlled, but laced with an anger Morrison had never heard. You and Castanos stay right where you are until I get there. Do not leave the bar. Do not talk to anyone. If I find you spoke another disrespectful word to her, I will personally see to it that you spend the rest of your careers on latrine duty at the most remote post I can find. We didn't, Morrison tried to explain. Be quiet, Richards snapped. I'm on my way. 20 minutes. The line went dead. Morrison stared at the disconnected phone, then at Keisha, then at Castanos, whose face had gone ashen. What the hell is happening? Castanos muttered. Keisha eased back onto her stool as if nothing had happened and ordered another whiskey. You wanted to know about my tattoo, she said casually. You'll find out soon enough. The bartender, who had overheard everything, set her drink down without charging her. His hands were shaking too. Morrison realized even the staff had been affected by the shift in the room. Listen, he tried again, his earlier arrogance gone. If we made a mistake, Keisha turned slowly to him, eyes steady. You spent 30 minutes calling me a liar, questioning my service, implying I'm a fraud. And now you want to say, if? She sipped her whiskey without breaking eye contact. Tell me something, Morrison. Have you heard of Above Black? The words hit both men like a punch. Above Black, the whispered label for operations so classified they didn't appear on any official record. Rumors that ran like a chill through the corridors of power. That doesn't officially exist, Castanos stammered. Exactly, Keisha said. It doesn't officially exist. Just like I was never officially in Afghanistan in 2009. Just like that photo I showed you was never officially taken. And just like you two never officially humiliated someone who spent 5 years in places where darkness has a name. Morrison's phone buzzed. A text lit the screen from an unknown number. Your superiors have been notified. Prepare for consequences. He showed it to Castanos. The younger man went even paler. How did she get our numbers? Castanos whispered. Kesha's smile was not friendly. It was the small, cold smile of someone who had revealed only the tip of the iceberg. Think I don't have resources? She said. Think again. Kesha's calm voice carried across the silent bar. Do you think I survived 5 years in missions that don't officially exist without learning how to protect myself? She took out her phone again. On the screen glowed a list of contacts names Morrison instantly recognized. Generals, commanders. People whose calls could end a career before sunrise. The question isn't who I am, Kesha said, slipping the phone back into her pocket. The real question is, what are you going to do to fix the mistake you've made in the last 40 minutes? Morrison and Castanos exchanged a helpless look. Now they understood. They hadn't insulted a random civilian. They had challenged someone whose reach could erase their entire record. The old Navy veteran approached once more. Gentlemen, he said quietly, you might want to start by apologizing and hope she's kinder to you than you were to her. Kesha finished her drink and glanced at her watch. Commander Richards should arrive in 10 minutes. Use that time wisely. You'll need a good explanation for why you mistook one of this country's most decorated officers for a fraud. Her eyes scanned both men-measured, unreadable, and sharp as glass. Because after tonight, she added softly, you'll understand that underestimating the wrong person can cost more than you're prepared to lose. Outside, engines roared and then stopped abruptly. Through the window, Morrison saw 3 military vehicles pull up in tactical formation. It wasn't just Richards. It was a full entourage. The door to Murphy swung open. Commander Richards entered first, followed by Colonel Martinez from Special Operations and Major Thompson from Internal Affairs. The air in the bar tightened. Where are they? Richards demanded, his voice slicing through the silence. Kesha lifted a finger toward Morrison and Castanos. The commander's boots echoed like gunfire on wood as he closed the distance. You two, he said, his face inches from Morrison's, have just made the biggest mistake of your careers. Sir, we didn't. Silence! Richard's shout made glasses rattle on the shelves. You have humiliated and disrespected one of the most decorated field officers in American history. He turned to Kesha, who was still sitting calmly at the bar. Then in a gesture that froze everyone in place, Commander Richards straightened, lifted his hand, and gave a flawless military salute. Colonel William, he said solemnly, on behalf of our entire command, I offer my deepest apology for what's taken place here tonight. The word colonel struck Morrison like lightning. Kesha Williams wasn't a civilian. She was a high-ranking officer. She inclined her head slightly. Thank you, Commander, but I think your men deserve to know exactly who they were talking to. Richards turned to them, his eyes hard as steel. This woman is Colonel Kesha Williams, former commander of the most classified unit our military has ever assembled. For 15 years, she led missions that protected countless lives in regions we were never officially present. The mark you mocked represents 5 impossible operations completed successfully, missions that, had they failed, could have changed the course of history. The room seemed to shrink. Morrison's knees wobbled. Castanos couldn't meet anyone's gaze. She retired 3 years ago with full honors, Richards continued, his voice now lower but no less severe. And you two, with only a few years of service, dared to question her integrity. Kesha rose slowly, the movement deliberate, powerful. She stopped inches from Morrison. The difference between us, kid, is simple, she said quietly. You learned to be a soldier. I was born a warrior. Her expression softened just slightly, not forgiveness, but understanding. Then she turned away, leaving a silence so heavy no one dared to breathe. Outside, the night swallowed the sound of the engines as the convoy pulled away. Inside Murphy's bar, 2 humbled seals stood in the ruins of their pride, realizing that some legends don't wear medals. They create them. You represent everything that's wrong with this new generation of operators, Commander Richards said. his voice low but sharp. Arrogance without wisdom, strength without humility. Colonel Martinez stepped forward. Sergeants Morrison and Castanos, you are officially suspended pending full investigation. Your credentials will be temporarily revoked. No, Kesha interrupted softly. Every head in the bar turned toward her. They don't need to be punished by the system, she continued calmly, an enigmatic smile forming on her face. They need to learn, and they will, in the most effective way possible. She paused, letting her words settle. For the next 6 months, you two will be assigned to work directly under me. In the new elite training program I'll be commanding. Her smile deepened, calm yet commanding. You'll find out firsthand what it truly means to serve under someone you once underestimated. Morrison swallowed hard. He realized this wasn't mercy. It was a more profound kind of justice, one designed not to punish, but to transform. 6 months later, the Operation Humility Training Center was in full motion. Colonel Kesha Williams had turned one night at Murphy's Bar into a revolution in how the military taught leadership and respect. Every morning at 4:30 a.m., Morrison and Castanos woke to drills that tested not only their endurance, but their character. They trained in hand-to-hand combat, strategy, and, most importantly, integrity. During a dawn exercise, Keisha's voice rang across the field. Sergeants, tell me, what's the difference between strength and power? Morrison stood tall, his tone steady and humble. Strength is what you show, Colonel. Power is what you don't need to prove. Keisha smiled. The arrogance was gone. In its place stood 2 disciplined, respectful soldiers. Her program quickly spread nationwide. Within a year, she was promoted to General Keisha Williams, the first black woman in the history of special operations to reach that rank. Murphy's Bar, where it all began, now had a brass plaque mounted above the counter. Official Establishment of Honor, General Keisha Williams. It became a gathering place for veterans who valued respect above ego. Morrison, now an instructor in her program, often told new recruits, I learned the hard way that judging someone by appearance is the biggest tactical mistake a soldier can make. Castanos, promoted to Diversity Training Coordinator, developed workshops on unconscious bias, now mandatory for every Special Forces unit. And the tattoo that once drew mockery, it became a symbol of operational excellence, studied in military academies across the country. Keisha had turned humiliation into education, bitterness into mentorship, and a moment of disrespect into a legacy of transformation. Before her newest class of cadets, General Williams stood tall and spoke words that would echo far beyond that training ground. True leadership doesn't come from muscle or medals. It comes from respect for yourself, for your mission, and for those who came before you. The greatest victory isn't destroying your enemies, it's turning them into better people. They once tried to humiliate Keisha Williams because of prejudice, but in the end, they were humbled by their own ignorance. Her triumph became their lesson, because true revenge isn't retaliation, it's success that lifts others with you. If this story of transformation through respect touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories where dignity always triumphs over arrogance. And tell us in the comments, have you ever been underestimated by someone?